and I am particularly glad to be here today. Before I go into that, my presentation today will cover two aspects. One, learning to be an entrepreneur, finding those opportunities, making them happen. And then secondly, the phase two, gosh, there's a much easier way to do this. And that's what I'll take you into, building a billion-dollar business. April the 25th, 2015. 11 of my colleagues, schoolmates, and I gathered together, like many of you did, for dawn service. We got together. We all said a little bit about what Gallipoli meant to us and what other aspects meant to us of Anzac Day. And then we put our packs on and went up a small hill. One of us got a little bit tired. So although we had started an hour later than planned, we didn't reach Everest Base Camp by midday. We stopped about an hour beforehand. And there's a little place there called Gorrick Step, where the first party got into this little hut, this lodge. We had a cup of tea, and I said to Peter Hillary, I said, look, I want to go and see Rob Hoare. He taught me to climb in the 1970s, his memorial, and then I'll meet you up at Everest Base Camp. I'll take a Sherpa, and we'll go and have lunch. We'll go and have afternoon tea with the Indian Special Forces mountaineering team that were putting 10 people onto Everest. And he said, fine, go and get yourself changed and get yourself a headlamp. You might be coming back a little bit later. And I went up there naked, and suddenly the building shook. And it swayed for about a minute and a half. And I said, shivers. No, I said something stronger than that. Got myself into the door frame, grabbed some clothes. It's not a very healthy place to be, caught in an earthquake right up there with no clothes on. Grabbed my clothes, stuffed us into a stuff pack, and I suddenly heard downstairs, everybody out, everybody out. Well, I wasn't ready to go out just at that stage, so I carried on. And then about 30 seconds later, I heard from the outside, everybody in, avalanche, avalanche. I said, ooh. And I looked out the window, and we got caught by the cloud, by the blast cloud coming off Everest. Think of an atomic bomb. This cloud just came up the hill, enveloped us. Came through at about 100 miles per hour. As soon as it had come through, it was the same. And so we quickly changed our plans that day. 10 minutes later, we're on our bikes, heading downhill fast. And for the next 4 days, we came across incidents, events that are just surreal. First 2 days, seeing everybody losing their houses, the economy lost. Going through village after village, nothing there. Because all the houses had been built out of carved granite, rectangular granite blocks, stacked on top of each other, no cement, no reinforcing. Then day 3, as we were at Temboshi, one of our guys didn't wake up that morning, and we had to deal with that. And that was a real shock to us, tragic, sad. And of course, what do we do? Well, we're going to evacuate, yes. But then, where we're going to evacuate to? 5,000 other dead bodies around Kathmandu at that stage. So we decided, right, we'll cremate. Got permission from the family within 3 hours to cremate, then the police work didn't come through. Then the police said, well, you've got to take them back to Kathmandu. Where do we put them? They said, take them to your 5-star hotel with you. I could just see us checking in, 11 plus 1. We got through that. We got a chopper in. We took them out to Lukla. We carried on down. Next day, we lost a porter into the river with our bags, still missing. And these events just carried on till we got to Lukla, where there was a cremation service ready for us. We carried this guy up a ridge line in the pouring rain for 45 minutes, put him on the big bonfire, and there we were. And then out of Kathmandu. The reason why I say all this is not to say that I had a big experience last week or the week before last, but the reason why I say it is, by gosh, we are lucky. We won the lottery when we were born or immigrated to New Zealand. We won the lottery just being here today. We are so, so fortunate. When I now look back at the folks in that valley, they have lost everything, and that's just one valley of thousands. So, that was a very long way of introducing myself as a King's College old boy, that I have a deep love for the mountains, and I don't have any slides for today because I spent last week with a severe bronchial infection. When I left school, I went to university, dropped out of it, and joined the army, specifically the New Zealand SAS. 4 things that gave me that really secured the foundation to all my successes subsequently. First of all, selection. Most of you have heard about the SAS selection course. It's pretty rigorous. You don't have any food for 10 days. They don't want you there. You want to get in there, all those issues, no sleep. And the thing that's taught me in the corporate world ever since was focus on selection. Because when I started out on selection, 120 of us started, 2 finished, 1 joined. Now, I'm sure your recruitment efforts are not as severe as that, and I wouldn't suggest they should be as severe as that. But I wonder how much we put into our recruitment process. I have focused on recruitment all my life, just recruiting the most outstanding talent worldwide I could ever find. Because the SAS taught me with talent you can do anything. Then you train. 1970s, late 1970s, I commanded the counter-terrorist team. Very important job for a very young and experienced officer. And part of us is, as you train, so shall you fight. And we would build a little room half the size of this, sandbags. And then over a period of 3 months, we'd train the guys to go in there and engage the targets with live ammunition. And we often put on presentations for visiting dignitaries, be they generals from the United States or a prime minister or whatever. And I remember one particular incident where we put on the presentation, the idea, I was just talking to the VIPs behind a table, and I said we use this to train our folks in speed, surprise, shock action. On the key shock action, the guys came in, the stun grenade went off, gauged the targets, I was out within about 3 seconds. And this brigadier said to me, "God, Guy, that was fantastic. Tell me, do you ever do that using live rounds?" And I said, "Look at the target next to the Prime Minister's head." Oh my friggin' God. Yes, of course, we had used live rounds right there. We didn't miss. Leadership. It taught me leadership. As a very young officer, 23, 24 years old, commanding all these guys who'd been in Vietnam, you can't tell them what to do. And so I learned very quickly how to build teams, and very small teams. I came out of that whole experience, recruit outstanding talent, share the vision, let them fly. Well, I left the military, 1980 or thereabouts, and I went to India, got myself a truck, drove people around India. Went up northern parts of India and then across to Pakistan. And that's where I found my first entrepreneurial buds, as it were. I identified at the intercontinental chain of hotels in Pakistan, they had a license to sell on-premise alcohol, but they had no license to import. Meanwhile, in India, you could buy Johnny Scotch Walker for $5 a bottle. So I quickly arranged contracts. And I had around the drive shaft of my truck built a container that took 12 cases of Johnny Scotch. And of course, I buy in Amritsar, go across the border at Wagadu, and make my supply. And I do that once a month, $5,000 profit each crossing. Until one particular memorable day. And I came up to the Wagadu border crossing, about 1 minute to 11. "Stop, Mr. Haddleton." "Ooh." I said, "Yes." They said, "We think you're smuggling. We've been watching you. And we've got number 1 boy, exact words, from Calcutta up here to teach us how to strip a vehicle." And out marched a platoon of cadets in white starch uniform, left, right, squad, halt, all that crap. Okay, and they stopped. They took out the front of the car, the front of the truck. About half an hour later, up in the back of the tray, and the number one boy, perfect starch uniform, 3 gold epaulets up here, under the truck, came straight out, truck clear. And I said, told you so. And what had happened was about half a mile before the crossing, I'd got under the truck and sprayed it with 2 cans of WD-40, thinking white starched uniform, oil coming off a drive shaft wouldn't go very well. I have never smuggled ever since in my life again. I am the most terrible person to go through a customs with because I declare everything. And I came back here, did an MBA, and went to the UK to find my fortune. In the UK, I was appointed managing director of TV Direct. TV Direct was a startup. It represented the Astra satellite television channels, specifically MTV, Screen Sport, Children's Channel, Arts Channel, and a couple of others. And the idea of TV Direct was to be a brand that would enforce subscription collection over the air from all viewers who watched the Astra satellite television. And of course, we were in competition to be Sky B. And my shareholders were W.H. Smith, Philips, Matsushita, Comet, and others. And one memorable board meeting, Philips announced that our encryption technology wasn't going to be available for at least another 2 years. Oh, no problem, said the chairman, Sir Simon Hornby of WHS Smith. He said, we want revenue. Next board meeting, I expect 15,000 customers. How the hell are you going to get 15,000 customers just like that when you can't even enforce subscription? And I thought about it over the weekend, and I just remembered the BBC license. Well, let's not call ourselves a program, let's call ourselves a license. Okay, and then I went down to one of our studios and got the cheapest ad ever made. It was just a grey, fuzzy screen, as if you couldn't get a reception. And then I had a voiceover. This is what your TV will look like if you don't pay your license fee. I've had Dame Fortune on my side a lot. And as luck would have it, I aired the first ad between Argentina and Brazil World Cup semi-final or something, just as the goal was being scored. 20,000 people telephoned the Bristol Exchange in the UK, crashed it, and we had a business. It was absolutely fabulous, and that's where I learned the power of very simple marketing. But of course, with it comes issues. Esther Rankin, the BBC watchdog, suddenly received hundreds of complaints that we were abusing the word license. We weren't really abusing the word license at all. We were licensing, but people were confusing that they had to pay it like the BBC, and I said, yes, they do. So she rang up and said, I want to come and do an interview with you. Well, that scared the hell out of me. And I said, by all means. And I rang up the BBC Panorama team and asked if they would train me against BBC Watchdog. Of course, yeah, £20,000, absolutely, no problem. So I spent 2 days being trained by the BBC Panorama team. And I still thought, hey, if I go on air, this isn't going to work for me. They'll edit, they'll do everything. And I suddenly had a brainwave. I called Esther up and I said, really looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Really looking forward to it. You know what? This is so important, everybody's got to know about it. I've got one of my own film crews coming as long as they're going to film it along with you. She telephoned 10 minutes later and said, we're not coming. And that was the best way to resolve that issue. So, the other thing that TV Direct gave me was outside my CFO's office was 4 or 5 spreadsheet accountants building plans as to should we or should we not sell product over the air? What happens if we get a new station? And I said to myself, why doesn't somebody automate that? This is crazy. This is 1990. And so August the 18th, 1990, I left that business, placed an ad in the FT classified Saturday, and it said, business plan on Lotus 123. Best business plan ever, says corporate financier, £49, color-coded manual. Sat at home all day, waiting for the telephone to ring. Nothing happened. Sunday, nothing happened. My wife, who was in the States at that stage. I rang her Sunday night and said, this crazy idea. I've retired, resigned, and nobody's responded to my ad. I don't think this idea is going to work. Monday, I had 49 orders and no product. And for the next 2 weeks, I had to work out how to build an integrated P&L cash flow balance sheet, which is actually harder than I thought it would have been. Of course, and I was a low-cost operator in those days, okay? I was the entrepreneur. I went out in the streets and got cardboard boxes and cut them up for the packing, and I did all that sort of stuff. So I then said, okay, we've got a business. First thing I've got to do is recruit an accountant who can actually write an integrated P&L cash flow balance sheet, not my crummy little thing. And I thought, how do we scale this out? So I went and saw the Financial Times, a relationship I had from the TV Direct days. And I said, look, this is middle of recession. I bet you guys don't sell that front page of the Financial Times every day. And I know you charge £8,000 and £8,500, and you have a policy of no discounting. I know that story. I bet you have problems. So here's what I'll do. Here's the offer. I offer you £1,000 a month. You can place my ad any time in that month, and I promise I won't tell anybody. And they said, get out of here. And as I got out, they said, get back in here. That's actually quite a good idea. Sign this confidentiality agreement. And so, then they rang up about 3 days later, ad there, bang, put it in, pushed it in, 200 responses to my little Bristol flat. And they telephoned about 3 days later. They said, we've got another spot. And I said, I spent my monthly budget. Oh, don't worry, can we just use it as a filler anytime we want to? I said, oh, well, yeah, absolutely. And very quickly, we were getting, I did the same with the Sunday Times and all of them. I told them I won't tell anybody. And we were getting 600 responses a month. Well, that created a problem, because I lived in Royal York Crescent. Any of you who've been to Bristol, you know that's the largest crescent in Europe. And the postal delivery had to get shunted from sort of 8 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and people complained to the council that they weren't getting their post. And so one memorable day, as there were about 3 or 4 of us in my 2-bedroom apartment there, doorbell rang, and Malcolm Ogle was on the other end of the door. He was the CFO of Rolls-Royce Finance. And he had seen our advertising and said, I've got a problem, I've got a consulting requirement for you. He came up to my 2-bedroom apartment. I could see he was really very uncomfortable. So I sat him down, gave him a cup of tea. Doorbell went again. This is the Bristol City Council. We believe you have an unauthorized business operating from residential premises. We'd like to come up and have a look. Come up by all means. Shoved Malcolm and my secretary into my bedroom. I said, look, Malcolm, we've just been raided. Don't worry about it. And go and sit in my bedroom. Brought the folks in, got a stay of execution for 3 months, chucked them out. And I think Malcolm said, and I said, Malcolm, we're just a startup. We do ABC. This is the proposal, £20,000. And he said, yep, done. I think he had to get out of there in a hurry. He was just traumatized. So we took offices, and then the luckiest thing in my life ever happened to me. And as I said, I'm a very lucky person. But the luckiest thing that ever happened to me was a person by the name of George Kunzel telephoned me. And he said, look, I don't want to buy your product, but I've just spent the last 15 years in IBM building an integrated planning system on the mainframe. The downsides of IBM, I've secured the IP, I brought it down to the DOS Novell environment, and I can't sell it. Come and show it to me. A few days later, he was lecturing me on business planning, and I said, look, George, can't do it. You've got to show me something. So his intern, mathematician from Oxford, computer science graduate, Michael Gould, showed me stuff I could never believe was possible in a multidimensional modeling environment built for the end user. And I took one look at it, said, gosh, I need this. And it took us 6 months to merge. We merged the two companies 50-50, and I suddenly saw that I had the solution to all my customers, of whom we had about 10,000 at that stage, who were concerned about all the limitations of the spreadsheet. Well, that was great. because I had this business selling spreadsheet templates, bringing in 50, 75,000 pounds a year, and I had this new business that I could see was the future, but I hadn't sold anything. And we didn't sell anything for 6 months. And very quickly we became technically bankrupt. In fact, insolvent, I think is the word. And I looked at, and I started saying, oh, we've got a real problem here. And it was highlighted one particular day when I received a note from the Inland Revenue Department saying, blue note, you're in arrears, you're delinquent, 4 pages of finely typed notes, and at the last moment it was, and you have 28 days to pay. And I went straight through the business. We had about 18 employees there, and I said, we've just got credit. We've got 28 days credit. We're going to change the business on the spot. We're going to forget about the old business. We're going to focus on the new business. All of us are going to sell this new business, this new application. We're getting out there, and we are just going to focus. My wife was head of marketing. Within 10 days, we got presentations in front of Digital, HP, Lloyds Bank, and Dairy Crest. Dairy Crest was like a Fonterra here. Small version of Fonterra is going to go public. And I'll never forget that meeting in my whole life. I was late. There were 20 people in the room waiting for me. So on my mobile telephone, they talked me into, guided me in. Arrived 20 minutes late, and I gave a presentation. And the presentation was, give me some data. They gave me some data, and I built something. It was a price-volume modeling mix for them on the spot. And I could see I caught their attention. And I said, okay, this is good. And what do you think, folks? This is good. They said, okay, we're doing an IPO in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. We need to get all our financials done. And then I asked the acid question. I said, how many of you have been in this room together before? And they all looked around and said, this is the first time I've ever been in this room with these people. And they all said that. And these were all the decision makers. And I said, look, I think you've got a problem. You've got an IPO in 3 or 4 weeks, you haven't got any financials, you can't go out there and look at everybody. You've got to make a decision now if you are going to do some decent financial modeling or not. I'm going out to the cafeteria, come and get me when you've had a discussion. They came and got me about 20 minutes later, £900,000 contract, signed on the spot. And we were solvent. It was. So, long story, we built a market, we built a business, hard yakka, in the mid-market in the UK. We average order value £50,000, 400 customers. We won the UK. I then decided that we're going to go to America in 1996. And a year previously, I'd been to 3i. I'd called them up. I'd given them a presentation. I don't do business plans. Okay, I sell business plans. I don't do business plans. And I did a whiteboard sketch of what we're going to do to their managing director and to their head of technology. And I said, look, the only way I can build credibility with you is this is the vision. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to send you monthly board reports. Nothing else. I did that every month, sent them monthly board reports. A year later, I called them up and I said, you've had my monthly board reports. You know who I am. You've got a view. I'm going to the US. Are you going to fund me? They said, yes, on the spot. And they gave us £1 million, and off to the US we went. And the US was very, very similar. We started off in the mid-market. We built a pretty large organization there. And then we lost our soul because we'd been selling to the finance department and for $50,000 packages. And I said, why should we have planning by the few for the masses? Let's make it by the masses for the few. Let's involve the whole organization. Let's build ourselves a very large enterprise system, databases, technology. Fabulous. Go out and sell $1 million worth, as we did. $2 million worth, $3 million worth, but it was cast in concrete, inflexible. And of course, planning has to be flexible. But that was the business that we built. We had 350 employees, and we sold it for $160 million in 2003. And I retired. And I just said, enterprise software is too hard. I was 47 years old. But deep down, I knew that I knew a market inside out. I knew it was ready for disruption. I knew the best players in the market, and I knew how to raise capital. Then at a conference not dissimilar to this in New Zealand, I met Rod Jury. He had just sold Aftermail. And we started to talk about how do you build a perfect software company? Not just trying to seize the opportunity that comes in front of your nose, but how do you plan it 10 years ahead? What are the opportunities? How do you really build a billion-dollar business or a multi-billion-dollar business? And of course, it has to be well capitalized from the business, from the very beginning. But how do we take into account all our learnings and look at the market transformations that were going to happen? So, of course, that became Xero, and I became the earliest investor, as well as an IPO director. Coincidentally, same time, that maths intern I talked about, that came along with George Kunzel, Michael Gould, had just left IBM. And he wanted to build his last iteration of a datum one more time. So he called me in 2006. So out of all that, I built a framework for how do you build a multi-billion-dollar business. It's become reasonably talked about, not my framework, but the idea of building a billion-dollar business over the last year under the term unicorns. And a venture capital firm in the US studied all venture-funded companies between January 2003 and December 2013, and identified about 39 companies had billion-dollar valuations at that stage that had been venture-funded. It was about 0.07% of a very small amount. And today it's probably about 100, and if you look at them, there's probably about 52 that have come out of California. There's probably 25 that have come out of Europe, and 22 that have come out of the rest of the US, and maybe one in New Zealand and one in Australia. So it's quite hard to do. And the way I like to think about building a multi-billion-dollar business, not just a billion-dollar business, is first of all the idea. Some would say you'd have to have a big idea. I'd say it's much more fundamental than that. You have to have a massive purpose. When I built the first business, it was, okay, let's have spreadsheet templates, okay? It was a little idea. And ideas are cheap, and everybody has thought of the ideas before. I'm sure of you, when the iPhone came out, okay? When the iPhone came out, you all had a look at it and said, oh, I had that idea, okay? You probably all did. But it comes down to the execution, doesn't it? It comes down to what is the... And I call it a massive purpose. And we decided, Michael and me and Sue this time, that our massive purpose was to change the landscape of application software for the enterprise. We would enable business users to rapidly build very complex business applications in days, weeks. No IT, no consulting. Massive idea. And the idea behind this sense of purpose, this massive purpose, was that it would focus on planning. We understood planning better than anybody else in the market. Planning required flexibility because everything changes all the time, which was absolutely important. But this would just not be financial modeling. We would start off by building a platform that would integrate all the planning processes of the enterprise. So not just financial forecasting or modeling or whatever, but sales performance management, quota planning, territory alignment, supply chain planning, demand planning. And then we had the vision that the platform could evolve over time into reporting and analytics. And we were looking at we have to be 20 times better in performance, in data volumes, in usability, in scale than anything else. Because in doing so, we could disrupt the market. We would then become the disruptors, and we could change the landscape of enterprise software forever. And so we looked at it and said, it's got to be a minimum of a $10 billion market for us, because even if we fail and get 5%, that's still a nice number, okay? So we looked at it, and we took the planning component as at least 10 billion, if not 12, 15 billion. And then you've got reporting and analytics, and we've just got a massive market. So if I look at Anaplan, that sense of purpose is absolutely fundamental. It drives why you're there. It's just not an idea. You're going to actually do something much more than just build a template. And that's the same with Anaplan, that's the same with Xero. Rod Drury had the same idea of such scale with accounting for small businesses. And I could say it's the same for Wynyard. Wynyard's a little bit behind us. But it's exactly the same for Wynyard. They are doing massive data analytics for the judicial and intelligence communities. And their difference is for the front lines, for the operator. You don't need a PhD. And it's transforming the way that many of those communities do their work. So the first, if you're going to build a multi-billion-dollar value business, you've got to have that real sense of purpose. The next one is the people, the founders. There are two critical people in this game. It's the CEO and it's the CTO or the product guy. Both have to be at the top of their game. The other people around you, if you have co-founders, and I would recommend no more than two, but and I certainly wouldn't recommend just one, because one's got to do product, one's got to do all the rest of the stuff, raise money, position, etc. We decided to take our time. We weren't going to build a product in 3 months. We were building a platform. So we spent 5 years at it, 20 developers. Cost a bit of money to do that. So the interesting thing about unicorns, 90% of founders have worked together before. The average age is 34. And there are some old farts like myself and the Workday boys who are 60 who've done it. And so it's the whole range. So the Facebook boys are at the other end of the spectrum and not necessarily exclusively for young people. We spent 5 years building the product, getting the product mix sorted, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But after 5 years, I suddenly appreciated, if this is going to be a multi-billion-dollar business, I'm probably slowing down a bit. We need the best CEO in the world, literally the best CEO in the world, to scale. We had the product market mix sorted, we had 10 referenceable customers. So we did a search. We started off with 800 people. And we narrowed it down to 20. And the requirements I had was, our business is based in San Francisco, cannot be American, because it had to be global from day one. We were global from day one. And we found this guy who had followed me in a similar vein, who had built a business, sold it to Business Objects, was now managing a $2 billion business unit in exactly the same space at SAP. And when we met, we connected very quickly, showed him the product, and he was in. What would you pay somebody like that to join? What would you pay? And let's just do the cash compensation. Let's say it's $300,000 for salary and then $350 or $400 for a bonus. What sort of equity would you give that guy? Would you give that guy under 1%? Under 3, under 5, under 7 or 8? Well, who would say under 1%? Just, I'd like to get a feeling for where we are in New Zealand. Under 1%? Nobody would give them under 1%? How about under 3%? Gosh, I wish some of our boards would think like this. Okay, under 5% equity. That's it. And under 7 or over. We gave them 7%. Okay, and the company's worth over $1 billion now. 4-year vesting, no hurdles. There was one hurdle: stay employed. Okay, don't believe in hurdles at all, because I think they can be artificially gamed. At the end of the day, it's up to the CEO or the chairman. Do we want you or don't we want you? Are you the best in the game or aren't you? The value of bringing this guy on board was that he had the SAP experience. So as I built the UK team up for the GoToMarket team, he brought on board the guy who was going to be CEO of SAP France. We've just brought on board COO of SAP United of America to be our COO. And this guy just plays to win. He's 42, 43, in the prime of his life. Best decision I ever made after starting Anaplan. Incredible decision. The CEO is everything. The CEO is everything. Then the third thing is the product. I've talked a lot about the product, but if you're going to build a product that is going to be a multi-billion-dollar business, you need guys who've done it before. You need guys at the top of their game. And we managed to find the very best people from our old team, brought them together because they understood exactly what we wanted. And the outcome of today is, just this year, we've been awarded 2 Gartner Magic Quadrants. Now, that doesn't sound much, except that's using the same technology, first time ever. And we expect to get another 2 or 3. And the reason why our product is so damn good and it's focused on the business user, we decided to use Excel functions. Many of you will know GoTo or Lookup or whatever. And we use that as the metaphor in a grid-like object, not a spreadsheet, that allows you to rapidly build an application. And probably the best feature of our application, best innovation, is something that we call the living blueprint. You can see all the formula in a page this long and audit it just visually for something that has 500 million cells with the most complex logic ever. You can just see it on one page. And it is absolutely incredible. Of course, this scales to billions of cells and everything else, and I'm not going to do anything else. But then, early on, towards the end of last year, we then launched a hub, an app hub, an application hub, where now we've got people like Deloitte, PwC, all sorts of folks building applications for all types of planning on our platform. So, the next one. If you've got yourself in a position of 10 referenceable customers who can talk about it in a manner that nobody has ever talked about products before, that the platform scales, you've got your security there, and you've got the CEO, what does he have to do? He has to scale faster than anybody else. And we put a mandate down there of 10 times faster. You're going to grow 10 times faster than anybody else. So if we think about the end of 2012, I can't remember how many people we had there, but 30, 35. We're going to finish this year about 600, 700. A couple of years, growing. And with that comes the revenue. And we're doing our multi-million-dollar contracts now. We're doing multi-million-dollar contracts because our enterprise customers some of them have got 25 different applications running on us now, all connected. It's changing the way that they run their business. So, scaling 10 times faster. The other things that you need to be very, very conscious of is equity, capital raising. We raised what we had to 12, 18 months while we were in the development mode for the first 5 years. And obviously we invested some money into it. We had friends and family, and we did $6 million of friends and family just by walking along Takapuna Beach. And then we did another $10 million of some VCs in the US. But once we had got that product mix sorted, and what do I mean by product mix? That is the product fit for one small market? And our first small market was quota management. But once we've got there and we've got customers talking about it, then you go like hell. And last year we raised $100 million. We appointed Alan and Co. To do it out of New York. From the day they were appointed to the day we had money in the bank was 30 days, and it was $100 million at a very high valuation. Now, some of those people have come back this year and said, here's another $100 million at this very different valuation, which makes us more than $1 billion business. We haven't taken that at this stage. And then finally, I would say the exec team. I'm coming down to 4 seconds, so my last point. You're going to find, it's interesting that the execs, the founding execs, and there's Michael, there's Simon, there's Doug, there's three of them, plus Fred, the CEO. They've all stayed, haven't had to be moved on. But we've had to replace all the other execs about every 2 years. We have, they last 18 months to 2 years, but then the executive contracts in the US allow for that, and everybody gets very handsomely compensated. But we switch out very quickly the folks that we need to. So there it is. Building a billion-dollar business, it's really quite simple, okay? From a multi-billion-dollar business, this is going to be a $10 billion valuation, this business, very quickly, I have no doubt about it. But it's a very different way to starting out life as an entrepreneur and just finding that opportunity and going to the next one. It's a very deliberate strategy. It is very focused on sense of purpose. We were lucky that we had 3 tsunamis behind us, 3 technical tsunamis. We had the consumerization of software, i.e. what we called focus on the end user. We were lucky, we caught that one in 2006 before it became identified. We understood software as a service, and then the other tsunami, which we are at the forefront of, is in-memory computing. And we do everything in memory. We have to because we need instant calculations for billion records or billions of records. So, I think that's me. Who wants to build a billion-dollar business? It's quite easy, much easier than the first one.
Easy with a dose of courage, an ability to take quite a lot of risk.
I don't do risk.
A little bit of creativity. Could I ask you a question while we're just waiting for the mic to, if you could put your hands up for those who'd like to ask questions. But I was fascinated, you indicated you don't do business planning, but actually you're in the business of planning. So please explain that.
I don't write narrative for business plans. I think one of the things that we learned very quickly is to build a milestone chart of what you want to build from a development perspective. Okay, so we built, we see this use an easy number, $10 billion market opportunity for us that we could take over 5-6 years. So we've built milestones, 5 milestones. They're not concurrent, they're not sequential, they're concurrent, and we focus on each of those endeavors. And some of them will translate into revenue this year, some will translate into revenue in 3 years' time. Very clear plan. We do planning, I hasten to add, from a sales perspective. And we do it by quota management. We're going to have 150 salespeople. Okay, each of them's got this quota, there's going to be this amount of attrition, and there's going to be, say, 65% attainment. And we measure everything. We measure everything in absolute detail. What I don't do in business planning is write a big narrative of 100 pages. I just don't do that. But we do the finances, absolutely.
Right. So you don't.
And we use our own software.
Right. You don't spend the time on the book.
Right. No books. No books.
So, questions? Have I got any out there? You've left them all speechless, I think. What piece of advice would you have for the CEOs in the room? What's the most important thing that you think they should focus on?
Oh, there's so much there. I'd start at the top. And first of all, what's your board like? Okay, let's start with that primary tenet that I say there. Surround yourself by the very best people. So have you got the best board? If not, get rid of them and find yourself a board that will give you the advice. That's critical. Wynyard, we've got a fabulous board. I've seen other boards that are not so good. The next thing is look at your executive team. Okay, have you got the very best executive team around? The best. Now, are you in growth mode or are you in static mode? If you're in static mode, it probably doesn't matter. You know, you're going to be sleeping whatever happens. But if you're in serious growth mode, then make sure you've got the best talent you can find. If you're thinking about going offshore, I've seen people go to the UK first. I've seen people go to, I've done it myself, I've seen people go to Australia first. I would just go straight to the US, unless there was a compelling reason not to go, and because you've got some opportunities in the Middle East, whatever, that are unique to yourself. But once you've established a beachhead in the US, then it's easy to scale out to 300 people. Why try and do that 2 or 3 times? Australia, then the US, or Australia, the UK, then the US. Go into the US. Because this time, first time around, we went into Minnesota. And that was good. You know, coast to coast, and I could rationalize, etc. This time, we just went to the heart. We've established ourselves in San Francisco, and it's the best thing we ever did. Development team is in York. We had a development team here in New Zealand. And we have our GoToMarket operation out of San Francisco. And when I talk about speed, etc., scale, I think we opened 10 offices around the world last year. So it's, surround yourself with the best people. People.
People. It's all about people. All right, look, thank you for that. And would you just like to say a special thank you to Guy for, I think, a most stimulating discussion, and what a story. Thank you.
Thank you very much.